Hey guys, this is Avilo. I'm bringing you another video here. I said I would be doing more videos. I sort of slacked off on making the second one. But basically what I'm going to be talking about in this one is TvP mainly, and the future of TvP, where TvP will be headed towards eventually, mostly in late game scenarios. But I wanted to mainly talk about the matchup in general, along where the next step in the matchup. So, I mean, right now Terran players are having a lot of trouble against Protoss players in general, in the late game especially. And there's a ton of reasons for this, and I want to go through a lot of them and just describe, why Terrans are having problems. And the main thing to note is in beta and a little bit after beta, Terrans were dominating everything, and that's mainly because Terran was really flexible. It had a lot of all-ins available. Basically Terran had a lot of all-ins they could do, but Terran also had, a lot of stuff they could fall back on, like, they had cloak banshees back then still. They had faster stim packs. We had Reapers. There were so many things that made Terran a good race for doing, all-ins, which I'm not saying is a good thing. It's a good thing that they got rid of them. But for TvP, they really, they sort of left Protoss alone, and so now we have Protoss is destroying a lot of Terrans when it gets to the late game, mostly because a combination of patching Terran, which is fine because Terran was quite powerful for a time, but also because Protoss has finally figured out how to play. It took Protoss over a year to start using Warp Prisms in their play. Except for White Raw, there weren't many Protosses that were actually really doing Warp Prisms, and Protosses still aren't doing multiple Warp Prisms. There's still room to think about this, if you're a Terran player, to scare you a little bit. Just think about this. Since, the Starcraft 1 Protosses and the players with a hell of a lot of multitasking haven't switched over to Starcraft 2 yet, we haven't really seen, multiple Warp Prisms at, 2 or 3 different locations on the map in late game. Now, if you can think in the late game, in those, huge bankroll situations, or where both players are at 200-200, if you can imagine how Protosses use pylons to reinforce, their army, after they lose a battle or win a battle, essentially. Can you think about them also having 2 or 3 Warp Prisms out on the map at separate bases? They trade armies with you as the Terran, and then they're warping in here, and then they still have their death ball coming at you. So Protosses still aren't really playing as good as they to their potential, which is one of the key reasons why suddenly the game is harder for Terrans, because Terrans figured everything out. We figured basically everything out for our race. Almost everything. I'm going to go into a couple of things that Terran players haven't figured out yet, that I think we'll figure out soon in general for late game. So there's still stuff to be discovered for Terran. It's just that Terran was so figured out. They were right here for a while, and then we got patched, so we were sorted down, but we're up again. Protoss was always, their potential has always been way up here, but only until recently Protoss finally figured things out, so now it's about more even. But, pretty soon you're going to see Protoss a little bit above Terran in the late game, until Terran players figure out, oh, we need to do this, and then it'll be about more even in the late game again, and it'll be balanced, really balanced again, I think. The balance in general is pretty good. But yeah, it's a combination of many things, and one of those key things is Protosses have learned how to play better, just in general, as well as getting help with patches. Every time a Terran has learned how to play, we got our shit nerfed. We got our stuff patched. We finally learned to incorporate ghosts into our play, and they got nerfed. Protoss players complained because they were putting their Templars in a clump and getting them all EMP'd at once. So Blizzard helped them out and actually nerfed EMP, and they made upgrades cheaper. which is also another reason why we're having problems now, because in a lot of these TvP games, Protoss players are focusing so much on hitting that 303 upgrade. We're finally seeing the Protoss turtle style come back into play, where a lot of Protoss players in TvP are actually, or PvT, TvP, PvT, they're actually never attacking. They're just sitting on their side of the map, getting 3-3, and they're just sitting there. They're just taking their third base, and they're just sitting there. And yeah, if they see an opportunity to attack or do some damage, they'll attack you. But yeah, they're starting to use warp prisms now. They're starting to use DPs more. But yeah, they're just sitting there and gathering their death ball and getting a bankroll. Protoss right now is in a situation where they want to get that Templar, Colossus, Archon death ball going. And the reason this is such a good thing is, with a lot of gateways in the late game, Protoss can reinforce with Mass Zealot. And since the only real viable option for Terran in terms of playing a straight up macro game is playing Bio, Viking, Ghost, what ends up happening is, if Terran and Protoss trade armies, like if they clash and trade armies, if Terran wins the fight, Protoss uses all of these, 10 to 15 Zealots from Mass Gateway Warpins off of 4 bases by that point in the late game. They use those to push the Bio Ball back, and that gains them time to rebuild their Colossus, to warp in Templars and reaccumulate energy, and then take one more base and cannon it up. Play just uber defense. And they'll do this over and over and over and over again. They'll rinse and repeat this trading of armies, take one more base above Terran, and then they happily let Terran do it again. And that's one thing Terran players are not doing so well lately. Terran players actually attacking way too much into this Protoss. It's like the Protoss meat grinder. Essentially like in Starcraft 1, where Protoss players basically had to try and chip away at the Terran, mech death ball with, Arbiter Recall, Psystorm, Stasis Field, any way they could. Well, it's the opposite in Starcraft 2. Protoss is in the late game, Protoss is the defensive race with, warp-ins anywhere on the map where they have pylon power, which is going to be anywhere on that side of the map if they're really good. And then, cannoning up, and then getting their death ball, and then continuing to accumulate cash. So, this is also, it's not just, this is actually just late game stuff that Terran players need to start thinking about and developing, is not attacking, not being aggressive in terms of pure army engagements. A lot of Terrans I've seen on streams and tournaments, and, Terran players that are better than me right now as well, they keep attacking until they run out of steam, and Protoss just absorb, like I said, they absorb every attack. They just warp in Mass Zealots to stop the Bio Ball, and then that gives them time to remake Colossus, remake Templars, and then they take another base, cannon it up, and they let Terran attack them again until finally Protoss wins that engagement from Psystorm, Colossus being cost effective, and then Terran has nothing left over, and guess what? If Terran loses a battle in the late game like that by an overwhelming majority, there's boom, a huge warp-in round of Zealots and Archons on the Terran side of the map at their freshest expansions. So, the late game TvP that everybody's, sort of oh my god, Protoss is overpowered, Protoss is, really tough to beat. It's a combination of all the buffs to Protoss, but it's also a combination of Protoss players getting much, much better at the matchup and learning how to play in the late game, and realizing that they don't actually need to attack. Sorry, that's my phone, but my alarm ringing. But it's a combination of Protoss players, they finally learned they don't need to attack. They can use Warp Prisms. So, what I'm going to go through here, I'm going to go through one of my own replays to show an example of what Terran players should be working on to develop in the late game. And basically the theory is, if Protoss isn't going to attack you, if they're just going to, take another base, build their death wall, as a Terran player, you want to do essentially the same thing and try and, try and, do some drop harass a little bit, but not so much drop harass at the later stages of the game. You're actually going to end up doing what I think is going to be the next, Protoss finally learned how to play, so they're up here in the late game. Terran's about right here. Terran players need to more consistently be doing the following things in the late game. Turtling their half the map, because that's what Protoss is doing, so Terran players need to do the exact same thing. A bio ball with Viking and Ghost, it works to a certain point in the game, and then, this late game Protoss army and meat grinder of just, mass zealot warp-ins is killing us. So what Terran needs to do is actually transition into battlecruisers and ghosts, as well as nuke silo play. These are the three key points I'm going to be making. Is not attacking, like not being overly aggressive in the late game, which Terran players are still doing. They're still being way too overly aggressive in the late game when they shouldn't be. They're just throwing units away, and then, when if Protoss warps in 10 zealots to stop a drop and a couple stalkers, and they stop the drop cold, guess what? All those units that they have here, that they just obliterated your drop, your 2 dropship drop or whatever, they just add these units back into their death ball. So you actually lost resources, and Protoss gained resources. And you see this even in GSL games recently, and in other tournament games. But that's what ends up happening. Protoss warps in, they kill the drop, they add all of these units back into their huge death ball, and Terran comes out just throwing away resources for nothing. And that's why I'm saying that Terran players need to take the next step in developing the late game, and actually not attack as much. Aggressively take expansions, but not keep attacking and throwing away units. Let Protoss, it's at the point now where we need to let Protoss come to us, and because of the way warp-in works, that's essentially how we need to be playing. You need to play very defensive, just like Protoss is in the late game. And I know this does sort of bring like a turtley style back to Terran, or, a turtley theory, but it was bound to come back to this point eventually, so that's what needs to happen. And the second point I was saying is multiple nuke silo play. I think I was one of the people that maybe helped Terran players realize how good nukes were. Maybe that's big of me to say, but the standard, I would say right now in late game TvP is triple nuke silo. When you get to the point where you're maxed out and you have a lot of ghosts, there's no reason not to get at least minimum 3 nuke silos for nuke harass. And the reason this is really, really good is because finding cloak ghosts around the map in the late game, when everything's going on, you're multitasking, they're multitasking, you're forcing things, you're running around the map a little bit, but finding single cloak ghosts that you're either dropping in their base cloaked, or that you're, walking around the map cloaked, nuking different locations, ideally 2 or 3 locations at the same time, becomes way more difficult than Protoss actually seeing your dropship fly to their base, land the Marine and Marauder, and they just warp in and fucking kill it. Now, if they hear nuclear launch detected, and then you drop in their base with a ghost that's already cloaked and on hold fire in the dropship, that's, so much harder to actually key in on as a Protoss player and try and find, oh shit, they dropped a ghost in my base. I'm going to lose a lot of stuff. And, ideally, so Terran players need to start doing this as well. It's ghost drops. Ghost drops along with ghost runarounds on the map and multiple nuke silos in the late game when you're maxed. Nukes don't take supply, so that's the next evolution of the Terran TvP late game that not every Terran player is utilizing yet. A lot of players are. They've started to figure it out, and that it's really good to do, and they're starting to do it. So that's the next step. And the final step for, saying, giving the big middle finger to Protoss players is battlecruisers. That's the tier 3 unit that we have that actually, if you can max out, if you can throw away all of your bio, if you can throw away all of your Vikings eventually, and just have pure BC Ghost and nukes, it's actually the strongest army that Terran can have in any matchup. That goes for every single matchup. if you can reach 200 with like 10 SCVs mining, you know, gas or whatever around the map, and pure BC plus like, you know, 10, 11 ghosts, and then have 6 to 7 nukes on top of that to help you zone out and to help your battle cruisers win battles, along with having, you know, so many Yamato busts. That's actually the strongest late game unit composition that Terran can make, and that's the final step in you know, solving TvP late game and having an army that can actually stand up and fight the Protoss army. And you know, the step after that for Protoss is mass void ray carrier with Templar and a mothership. But since most Terran players haven't really figured out the BC stage, we haven't seen the counter to that yet. Although I've actually played it out many times, so I've seen that the theoretical counter is actually, you know, mass Blink Stalker, carrier, void ray, mothership. That's actually the next level counter to that, but I won't get into that too much because Terran players need to get to the BC Ghost stage first before we can actually move on to the next stage. But even if Protoss does get that, what I was just talking about as the counter to the next step in Terran play, Ghost counter that. So that's why I'm saying BC plus Ghost. Like EMP counters Templar, counters the mothership, so it can't vortex you. It counters EMP counters Archon. So BC and Ghost, that's the final combination of steps here. So A, being defensive as Terran in the late game. B, multiple nuke silos with Ghost. That's the next step. And then C, battle cruisers. That's, you know, the third evolution here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to go through a replay really quickly, and I'm going to demonstrate this in action, what I'm talking about. And how you reach that endgame stage really doesn't matter as long as you play every stage before that in a fashion that will actually, you know, allow you to get to that stage. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up Starcraft, and I'm going to go through a replay of exactly what I am talking about. And you guys are going to see that it's very turtly. I'm actually known for my turtle style, but like I said, I'm not the best Terran player in the world. So if you can imagine Korean Terrans beginning to do this, or even other foreigner Terrans that are considered better than me right now, we would see a lot more Terrans having more success in the late game. So I'm trying to keep improving as well and getting better myself. I think of a lot of creative stuff, I guess you could say. So I'm constantly trying to improve my mechanics and keep getting better at the game, you know, thinking about it and stuff. But you know, when things like this get into the hand of even better players than myself, I think Terrans can have a good chance in the late game. So this is a TvP on Shakura's Plateau, and I'm just going to speed through this because the beginning is not as important as what I'm sort of discussing as the steps for the last part of the game. I will discuss a little bit of what goes on the replay. I believe that I went with a 2 racks here. I just went with the Reaper and then built a second racks right here. Yeah, so I do remember most of this game. And my opponent has gone for a 1 gate, and then I killed a couple probes here. He did a little bit of a Zealot Stalker poke, and then he basically went into a Robo, and I believe 3 gates after his Nexus had gone up. So there you see the 3 gates in the Robo. That way he can get out the Observer, and then he goes for the Robotics Facility. And you can see me here. Let me slow it down a little bit. I built 2 bunkers because I wasn't sure what he was doing, and I also have the Sensor Tower, which allows you to counter Blink Stalker builds, which are really common on Shakura's. Because if they go for a Blink Stalker roll in, the Sensor Tower it lets you get in position. And it also let me see this Colossus drop. He actually went for Colossus drops, which is very unique. And but that's another thing that Protoss players are starting to learn this. That things like this, Colossus drop for instance, really, really good. If I can pause it, this Colossus has 5 kills, so he's done decently with it. He mostly got Marine and Marauder kills, which ideally he would have wanted SCV kills, I think. But, you know, that's something that keeps Terran on their toes as well, and he's taking a 3rd base while he does it. So That's really, really good, and most Protoss players you don't really ever see do Colossus drops much. But if you can macro and take a third base and micro a Warp Prism with the Colossus, then it's really, really good, and Protoss players need to be doing that. So you already see, this is like one of the stages of development right here. It took about a year for Protoss players to finally figure out this was really, really good. And also, I mean, Blizzard buffed the health, which was very helpful, but even before that, it was still really, really good. It just took a while for people to catch on, because whenever new things are introduced, you know, people are very stubborn. Even myself, I'm sometimes very stubborn to new ideas, and people don't, like, if it's something unexplored, people tend to say, oh, that will never work. Throw that out the window. So as you can see, I'm 1-1 on my bio. I'm just macroing, you know, doing my best to macro. I'm getting my barracks up. I have a reactor Starport, getting my upgrades, you know. That's the other important thing, is keeping up with Protoss upgrades, which, admittedly, nowadays is really hard, because as you can see, I do have my weapons, but my armor's a little bit behind, so he's going to hit 3-3 before I have 3-3 started here. That's usually how the game will go nowadays against Protoss. They really do, they focus on chrono boosting out the upgrades. So once again, you see, Protoss isn't actually, he's attacking. This is the new Protoss style that people have figured out. If you go for fast 3-3 chrono boosting, and then get that death ball of Templar plus Colossus plus mass charge lot reinforcements, it becomes really hard for Terran that's just on bio, and this was actually a mistake. I almost lost my entire army there. That was really close. I could have got force fielded. Alright, but now, this is the stage of the game that I'm talking about. This is the part of the game, you know, I'm doing a drop, which is really good, but this is almost almost the end of the part of the game where drops are effective. Like, after this drop right here, drops are essentially going to be a no-no, because of warp-ins, because of, you know, Protoss gaining a bankroll. It's just not going to be good to waste drops, because if he warps in and then brings his army back, he just adds the warp-ins back into his army, essentially. But it is, at this point in the game, that, I mean, if you can get a drop-off, then that's really good. It'll force him to go back, it'll force him to do stuff. But as you can see, Protoss still isn't attacking. So, this is where, you know, my points come in. This is where I'm saying Terrans need to be a little bit more defensive, instead of going into this, the Templar, Colossus, Deathball, meat grinder. You can do some harassment like this, which is good. And this map really illustrates what I'm talking about very well, because it's Chikuras and you can split the map in half really, really well. But, for example, these two command centers, I'm actually building 2 command centers in the center of the map. And at first, you're probably thinking, like, what the fuck? Why am I wasting 800 minerals to build those in the center of the map? Doesn't that seem like a huge waste? Well, if Protoss isn't going to, if attacking, you know, if Terran players, as a Terran player, like, using our bio and just suiciding into their death bowl, it hasn't been working for us. So what I'm saying here is, okay, I'm going to try something different. So essentially what I'm doing is, I have sensor tower coverage on my half of the map. That'll help against Warp Prism harass. I'm still doing some harass here. As you can see, his death balls coming to kill that, and then I managed to get the drop chip away. But I'm basically taking my bases, making a turret ring as well, because in the later stages of the game, this will stop Warp Prisms from really doing too much. And then I'm setting up this command center wall in the middle of the map. I'm still getting upgrades, still getting everything, but this is going to allow the time for the late game transitions. And now, basically everything that, you know, theoretically Protoss is imbalanced. Protoss, we can't really attack because they just warp in mass charge loss as reinforcements. Now everything is in reverse. Now what I'm doing here is I'm basically saying, alright, if you're going to turtle in the late game and warp in 5,000 zealots, then guess what, Protoss? Guess what you're going to have to do? If you're going to attack into me, you're going to have to attack into 3 planetary fortresses, you're going to have to attack into Ghost EMP, you're going to have to attack into Vikings, and you're going to have to attack in my Marine Marauder Ball on my half of the map. That's the key point here. On my half of the map, Protoss is going to have to engage me. And while he can build pylons to instantly reinforce, with the planetaries, they'll give you time to get your reinforcements back to the center of the map, or whichever map you're playing. As long as there's a central point that you can do this, this is really, it's good to do, or any choke points. So I'm saying, you need to attack me, Protoss, and if you do, you're going to lose a lot of your army, and I'm going to get more resources instead of attacking on your half of the map and then needing to run away when you warp in 5 bajillion charge lots, which is what happens in a lot of TvP games nowadays. So as you can see, I'm just sort of playing defensive. This is the point in the game where also you want to get some nuke silos, and I will get those very shortly. And I'm just scanning, trying to keep track of his army. As you can see, he's still not attacking me. He's just sitting there, he's getting his bankroll. That's what Protosses do. They want to get a huge bankroll because then they can attack and they can instantly, immediately warp in with a pylon or a warp prism. So I'm basically saying, screw that. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to turtle it up, and I'm going to try to do little harassments to you to do some damage. I'm going to do this. I'm going to try and do this. And so right here, triple nuke silo. 3 nuke silos. I have another in my main right there. Because you're going to end up with a lot of ghosts in the late game. So I'm preparing to go into the end game, that next stage I'm talking about, the triple nuke silos. And you can even see in the production tab, I'm researching the range upgrade, and that's mainly for missile turrets, so it'll help against warp prisms. You can see I went heavy on the turrets over here. So that will allow me to keep my army in one location, that turret ring. Ideally, I'll do the same here eventually. The same thing here. But yeah, I'm pretty much set up. Also, nukes can be used defensively to gain time to, allow you to collect more resources to go into the next stage, which is battlecruisers. So, if I launch a nuke right here, that's going to zone out everything. I have the planetaries here, a nuke in front, the bio in the back, and then the Vikings over top of that. You become really, basically you become as cost effective as warping is late game for Protoss, essentially. And then of course you can carpet bomb EMPs. So now, this is the part of the game I'm talking about, the next stage. You eventually need to trade away most of your bio, because you're going to need that supply for battlecruisers. So I'm trying to get rid of this supply right here, some bio, into battlecruiser supply. And that's why these planetaries are so important. I know it looks really newbie, but they actually serve such a great purpose, because now I can get rid of these units safely in the late game with not as much fear of him just simply overrunning my side of the map and then warping in and killing me. These planetaries, the Vikings, along with defensive nukes, if needed, will make it so, it's sort of like, go away, go back to your half of the map while I get more money and I get ready for battlecruisers. So that's why this is the next stage that Terran players, I've seen some people try to do it, and actually I was watching a GSL game of Keen versus, I think, Parking, and Keen actually had the right idea with going into the battlecruiser transition. The only problem is, he kept attacking on Protoss' side of the map, and he kept losing units, he kept trading inefficiently, and then Protoss had a huge bankroll, and he didn't. And then, on top of that, he was making 2 BCs at a time, and that's not what you want in the late game. You want to be making 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like 6, 7, 8, 9 BCs immediately after you, lose this, after you lose your bio, after you lose this bio and trade it away. You want to be making like 8 or 9 BCs at once, because if you don't, 2 battlecruisers is not going to work against like 15 stalkers being warped in or a bunch of archons being warped in. You'll just die. So this massive burst in starports and production, as well as getting the upgrades through your air, is what will allow you to transition into battlecruisers safely. So, as you can hear, there's some nukes going off here, and that is actually at his base. Now, this drop is much harder to deal with than simply Marine Marauder. If this is only a Marine Marauder drop, let's say these are just Marine Marauders, then yeah, I may be able to take it out with just Marine Marauder. But now Protoss needs to send an observer. They can't just rely on pure warp-ins to stop the ghosts, because they need detection. So if they don't have detection when you are actually dropping with ghosts, then they're basically fucked. So this is like the next stage here. And I do have those 3 nuke silos, so I'm launching a nuke at the top. I thought there might have been a nexus there, but there's actually not. And then I'm launching 2 nukes here, and then I'm using the 4 marauders to sort of finish off the nexus. So that's essentially what we're going to see here. The marauders are helping to damage it, and then you see the 2 nukes drop. I load the marauders back up, and ideally I would finish that off. I think the ghosts, the marauders are those are gonna go back down there to. Oh, well, the ghosts will finish it off. But as you can see, you know, that's 1 expansion down for Protoss that he needs to rebuild. And ideally, you drop some ghosts and try and do infrastructure damage. Like, look at this. This is so ripe for nuking. Like, look at these buildings. The good Protoss players are going to build their base in a neat formation like this. This is just lovely. Like, oh my god. Like, oh god. I'm having a nuke-gasm right now. Like, so many nukes to kill all this stuff. So, I traded away bio, and immediately, once I traded away Marine Marauders, I immediately start production of battle cruisers. You can see 4 BCs already on the tab. And I actually put up some more nuke silos somewhere, I believe, in a few minutes here. But once again, 2 nukes and a marauder drop, taking out a nexus. It's a very low cost investment to send ghosts around the map, along with maybe a drop full of marauders like I did here. It's such a low cost investment in the late game. You know, 1 ghost is 200, 100, and then you have the nuke silos. So once again, here's another ghost in his main, which. He actually ran out of cloak energy and couldn't get off the nuke, but having these ghosts, it's really hard for Protoss to sort of find where they are. As you can see from his vision, he doesn't actually know where that ghost is. He just sees the red dot and he's like, oh shit, I gotta move. And then once again here, this move here, there's actually a nuke right on that base, another nuke. And all of this bio, I know for a fact I'm gonna lose it. But look at the production tab. Immediately, as I lose all that bio, look what's in the production tab. Battlecruisers. More battlecruisers. Just more BCs. And the ghosts are doing their damage. So, yeah. And now I'm starting to accumulate those BCs. And he's trying to counterattack. But he has a mostly zealot army. Eventually, he'll try to get rid of all these zealots. Because now suddenly this mass charge lot shenanigans. It's like, well, guess what? You can't. Oh, charge lots can't jump. So, no. And then as you can see, here's a drop with a ghost in it, just a single ghost. That's going to be used for nukes. A single drop with marauders, ideally can do some damage. So it's just using a couple units in late game to try and do as much damage as possible. That nexus probably will go down. This nuke will land, do a little bit of damage there. I was at 14 HP, so it's pretty close. So yeah, but just accumulating BCs, more BCs. I've basically managed to convert my entire army supply into battlecruisers, and he's still being really defensive. He doesn't really know what to do. This is just sort of the next stage of TvP. He has all these Colossus, but they're not going to really do anything against the, like, eventually converting all of your army supply into battlecruisers. This is what? This is 8, 9, 10, 11 battlecruisers. That's 11 Yamatos. That's 11 free kills. Along with the ghost, I have 6 ghosts with full energy here. That means that even if he tries the Vortex, it's dependent upon your EMPs as the Terran player. Microing that group of ghosts, EMPing the Archons, finding the Templar, sniping, EMPing those, and, you know, EMPing the Mothership. So you can see I have a planetary here, and, you know, these EMPs are, he has no energy on the Mothership, and then he has to run away. So, and then late game, of course, you have many, many orbital commands. So now, look at the resource tab. Suddenly, it goes from this situation of Protoss being cost-effective, where you're just throwing units by, like Marine, Marauder, Ghost, Viking, constantly into the Protoss meat grinder on their side of the map. Suddenly, the situation's reversed in the late game. Suddenly, Protoss is throwing units into you. Now you become the meat grinder. Now you're just like, what's up, Protoss? You're going to have to attack me now, from now on, in the late game. If you don't, guess what? I'm going to build more battlecruisers, and the situation's going to get rougher for you. And more nukes. There's going to be more nuke harassment, you know, things like this. Let me speed it up here. So, settle down a little bit, you know, trying to take my expansions on my half the map. He's sitting here, he's sort of doing the next stage where he's getting Void Rays. But remember, even Void Rays died in this composition with EMPs, battlecruisers at 3-3. I forgot the armor upgrade, that's why it's really late. But Remember, one Yamato kills one Void Ray. It kills one Stalker. 2 Yamatos kill an Archon. So, and remember, the only thing that counters, Yamato is really feedbacking the BCs before they do anything. And then I'm getting rid of supply so that I have more supply for battlecruisers. And once again, now we're at the stage where suddenly, look at my bankroll. I have 9,000 minerals and 2,000 gas. And he's thrown a lot of resources at me trying to do damage, and I just absorbed it like a sponge. This is essentially Terran's warp-in, our defensive nature. This is like, instead of letting Protoss utilize their defensive nature, we're just like, okay, fine, we'll do the same thing. And so as you can see, as the game went on, I'm getting more nuke silos. I have a bunch more somewhere here, because I was getting more nukes. I don't actually remember where I built them, but I think I just have 4 this game. I have this 3 in my main, and then 4, and I'm just actually sniped a Nexus there with Yamato guns. This right here, I'm just getting rid of my Vikings. We're both maxed. So, and once again, wherever he moves, the ghosts aren't just for EMP. The nuclear missiles, they don't take up supply, so they're good for position, because if he engages right here, and we both get in an engagement, it's basically saying, are you really going to stay in this engagement? Because if you are, the nuke's going to land eventually, so you're going to have to disengage. So he has to run away, and then you can just cancel the nukes. They do take gas to rebuild, but, like I said, the goal is to get to this situation where you have this bankroll and you're building battlecruisers. Remember, I'm building more BCs as I throw away more SCVs, just more BCs. Another thing to note is the ghost I have positioned right here in one of the mains, and the ghost I have positioned right here in the other main. They're patrolling. The reason those ghosts I have on opposite ends of the map is, I'm thinking about what Protoss can do in the late game. What can they do to really throw me for, get my army out of position or try and kill my resources? And one of the only things they can do at this point with this mothership is try and send it around and recall. So, just like Starcraft 1, where you would have a science vessel patrolling your base to EMP incoming arbiters, same thing. You can have a ghost, and you can actually EMP the mothership if it comes in to try and recall into your main. And then that just shuts it down. So, just leaving one ghost at each base helps you prevent mothership recalls. And then the sensor tower, you're going to see it coming a mile away. So that's what that's for. You can actually do that with Ghost in Starcraft 1 with Lockdown, it's just no one really did it. And he just threw away all of his zealots because he realized that they're useless army supply. Building a lot of missile turrets because I know the only thing he can do now is mass void rays and carriers and mothership deathball. But once again, EMP sort of counters that, and you're just trying to do some nuke harassment here, taking out his bases, taking out infrastructure anywhere I can, and just right now I actually have 19 battlecruisers, 12 ghosts, and 2 nukes with 2 more finishing. So I actually have 19 battlecruisers, 11 ghosts, and 4 nukes. And remember, nukes don't take supply, so you can actually build like 2 or 3 more nuke silos and have a lot of nukes available, a lot of BCs, things like this. So let's go ahead and keep going here. Eventually, he's going to want to force an engagement. I go in here, I actually snipe a Nexus, which is good. That means more resources for me. I guess you could call this the Bill Gates Terran style. This is my late game TvP style, but you end up getting so much money that, guess what? If you both get into a remax situation, you can remax on BCs, or you can remax on bio. You have some options. Or you can remax on a lot of Banshees with your bio, with some medevacs. It really depends. But, once again, he's attacking. I throw down a nuke. I cancel it, and I snipe some Templar here, or EMP them. Now, this is the danger. You don't want to get Vortex, so it's going to be clutch in these scenarios to get EMPs off on their army, along with their mothership. So you can see I EMP'd the motherships, and no Vortex, and then I'm engaging, throwing Yamatos down on his Void Rays, throwing Yamatos on his Stalkers, double Yamato on the carriers, and that wasn't even close. Like, that battle, I actually have 16 battlecruisers left over after that battle from the 19 I originally had, and I only lost 3 ghosts, and I still have all 4 nukes after that. I don't have that much Vespene gas left, but that's because guess what? Look in the production tab. Immediately after I lost some of the army supply there and SCVs and other things, there's actually 7 BCs in production right now out of all of these starports, as well as there's actually some are actually over queued. I have 2 queued in there, and there's actually 1 extra one queued in there, which is an accident. And then there's more ghosts on the way. So, as you can see, this is a really, really cost-effective composition after you've gotten past the turtley stages and the bio stages. Suddenly, it's like, what is Protoss to do against this? And then he said, very interesting. So he was nice after the game, and I said GG as well. But yeah, you know, the key things. Instead of throwing stuff at Protoss, let them throw stuff at you. Suddenly, it's like, sup, bitch? We got this planetary wall. We got ghosts behind it. We got Vikings behind it. We got bio behind it. And then, you know, slowly, you know, do harassment, do your best to transition into battle cruisers. And yeah, just play defensive, get nukes, make sure you get your air upgrades, get your mass orbitals, throw away as many SCVs as you can so that you have more army supply for either bio or battle cruisers. But yeah, I think this is definitely the next stage of TvP. I mean, you can see really this really tells the tale. And this is not the only game I've played like this. I played a lot of games like this on my stream as well. So, a combination of those 3 things. A, Terrans needing to be more defensive in the late game and letting Protoss come to us, because Protoss players have figured out if we go to them, they have an advantage with Warpin. So, now it's our turn. Now it's our turn to say, okay, you come to us. Alright? And then the next stage. Terran players, we figured out finally, ghosts are really good. So guess what? Triple nuke silo. At least triple nuke silo. Later on, when you get more resources, you can have like 5 or 6 nuke silos. I went with 4 this game. 4 was enough to do what I was doing here. 3 to 4 is the magic number for the minimum you want, and it'll be enough to do constant nuking and positional nukes. 6 is usually the max for you know, just having a nice bank of nukes, and then if you want to go crazy, you can actually make like 8 or 10. Sometimes I do that. I'll go that fucking crazy. If the opponent's not responding well to it and you're nuking everywhere, then sometimes it can be worth it. But yeah, and then the final step, getting enough bankroll from gain the time you need to get enough bankroll and enough starports. I may have built 1 or 2 too many starports. I have 6 there and 1 there. I have 7, 8, 9 starports total. I could have switched these to tech labs. So I have 9 starports. Maybe 6 or 7 is the ideal number. I don't really know what the ideal number is, because this is sort of new territory for Terran period and for myself as well. So I make sure I throw down enough that when I do throw away my bio doing drops and things like that, I have enough starports that I can immediately start mass BC production. Otherwise, you know, Protoss can sort of steamroll you because you got rid of some army supply. So you're going to be a little weak, and that's where the defensive nukes come in, that's where these planetaries come in. It gives you time to accumulate those battle cruisers and get energy. So, yeah. This is what I wanted to make this video on. Essentially, is, you know, TvP late game, you know, these 3 things that Terrans can be doing better, because Protosses have learned how to play. They've gotten a lot better, admittedly, at playing the matchup. So, as Terran players, we need to be thinking about these things, those 3 things, you know, not just always being aggressive. You know, there's a time, if we can be aggressive, if we find opportunities to kill them, that is great. But if they're being uber defensive and turtling, then it's our turn to do the same. And the second thing, since we've already developed mass ghost play, please, Terran players, triple nuke silo, why not? They don't take up supply. So, you know, it's a really good thing for late game. It makes us stronger in the late game. That's one of our late game advantages. We have these things at our disposal. Nukes that they don't take up supply, they just take up resources, which is the trade-off. It does take 100 Vespene gas, so it's the trade-off. And then finally, BCs, which Blizzard actually did buff their speed once, I believe, so BCs are actually the final step in, you know, this is like our death ball, essentially, our late game death ball. And guess what? BCs kill everything. They literally counter everything, along with Ghost. Ghost fill in the hole of everything that the battlecruisers don't counter. Tactical nukes, whenever you engage with battlecruisers, allow you to win engagements or make them pull away after you get Yamatos off, as well as EMP in your opponent's Templar and EMP in the mothership if they try to go for a vortex, as well as EMP if they go mass Archons. Then you have mass EMP to deal with that. So yeah, that's really the end of what I wanted to talk about in this video here, and I believe that this is the future of TvP late game that people are going to start doing, and I hope they start doing it. Maybe some people will see this video and they'll think that's a good idea. Avilo's late game TvP might want to do that. Why haven't I been doing that before? Maybe. So I hope this and I think this can work at all levels. In the lower leagues, it's really good to be defensive. You're going to be defensive quite a lot of the time. So why not transition into mass battlecruiser Ghost? It's going to work really well for gold, silver, platinum. It's when you get to grandmasters and obviously pro level. When this will be a little harder to do, but it has potential. It has the most potential. It's much better than just suiciding your bio over and over again and typing out GG when it doesn't work, right? Like, right? Much better, much better. So, good luck to Terrans, and yeah, I hope this video was informative. And yeah, build battlecruisers in the late game. Build nukes. So. Good luck to Terrans. Peace. Thanks for watching, guys.